I'll invite Mr. Jan to give his point of view on the recent announcement of rupees 20 lakh crores of economic package. How do you see the overall this package impacting auto component space? Do you think the pain that the automotive industry and the auto component industry that was in, do you think there's a relief, there's a right medicine in this?
First and foremost, let me say that from the auto sector perspective, this pandemic could never hit us at a worse time. We were already talking about 15, 18 months of a decline. We were already in transition between a BS4 to a BS6, which means that the industry had invested heavily. Over the last 2 years, you have seen significant macroeconomic changes, demonetization, tax reformations, and massive, I would say, regulations coming in onto the auto sector, which obviously has increased the pricing. And hence, the point is that the sector was already extremely stressed, extremely vulnerable. And in January, although we were not in a lockdown situation, the sector probably experienced first time the disruption because China, Wuhan, which also has catering to a large automotive sector globally, we started to see a downturn in January because of the Wuhan crisis. And of course, in March, we all got into a lockdown. We started the financial year, unfortunately, for the first time in the history, as a zero revenue for the domestic industry. So it is not just a crisis, but it is like a survival now mode, which we have to see. Obviously, while going into this crisis, when we come out, we will be completely changed. Now, we have had multiple deliberations with the government of India. They have given us many patients listening at different forums. And I think as a sector, we have been synonymous with our demands in terms of three things. One is demand. We need to create demand. And from demand, we thought that this is the right time for tax rationalization on vehicles or even scrappage policy. The second point which we were trying to make was working capital. With zero revenues, I think everyone is looking at not earnings. It is basically going to be a loss for everyone. But I think today we need to really get equipped onto the working capital. I think I only see a silver lining where Honorable FM gave some definition for the MSMEs, where it was also ACMA's long-standing request to not just look at investment, but also revenue. And from an ACMA membership point of view, with the new MSME definition, almost 40% of our members, of the 850 strong members, they will actually fall under this category. However, there is a disappointment because the third demand was mainly on the employee welfare. At one hand, you've actually mandated us for paying the wages. On the other hand, we don't have any revenues coming in, and it's now become a matter of ability to pay. And obviously, the auto sector employs a large workforce. So I think going forward, if this kind of support on demand, on working capital, and on employee welfare is not specifically given, then I think we will be into a much more trouble mode, especially in terms of the layoffs, especially in terms of actually restarting operations. Point here is that we need tax reformation, tax rationalization, and not just immediate, but in a long run. We are one of the highest taxed industry. Everyone knows that. And we also, unless we get these rationalizations, we will not be able to create demand. I think for me personally, I don't think after a lockdown is actually lifted or even in green zones, I think the first thing a consumer is not going to go out and buy a vehicle. And I think that's where you need to motivate, incentivize, and that's probably the only way a person will get consumer confidence back, so that then the whole restart of the industry would be possible. I think that's the point where we need definitely support.
The MSME sector forms the backbone of the industry, and it drives the economy. And while we were awaiting the announcements by the finance minister, and we were hoping for stimulus, like Deepak said, the silver lining was actually the reclassification of the MSME sector. In terms of stimulus, really speaking, what the finance minister has done has offered us options for taking additional loans. In the current situation, where industry is already stressed and the MSME sector especially is heavily leveraged, taking on additional debt at this point in time, taking on additional loans, can help immediate short-term liquidity. But in the longer term, are the companies or the units going to be capable of actually repaying these? Or are we looking at a scenario where 12 months down, when the moratorium is over, we are going to have a spate of NPAs? This is a big question today. On the other hand, what was really needed, like Mr. Jain said, was for the welfare of the employees. That's where the biggest challenge is coming. We've been mandated to pay salaries. Today, there has been some judgment by the Supreme Court, but that doesn't put pay to the problems we face. And I believe that if the government had stepped in and taken timely action, perhaps we would not have seen this huge exodus of migrant workers which is happening today. And this is going to create a long-term problem. Today, industry is working at greatly reduced capacities. But a couple of months down the line, when things start improving, which they will, where will the manpower come from? It's a huge, huge challenge that we face.
My sources suggest that mostly the only cleaning and all work is happening at the vehicle manufacturer's site, and no actual production at many places have really started. How do you see the current situation? Can you give us a sense what is the current level of production and what is the production schedule that you have for the next few days?
You are very right, Nabil. This is varying from region to region and state to state and the customer to customer. And in our case, it is varying from 2% sale of our budget to, let's say, around 15% sale of our budget, which we originally planned. So we are still in the preparation stage, and we are finding challenges. Preparation was good enough because we understand that the COVID-19 norms is mandatory, and we all, as a national responsibility, we are in a process of that. But it is good enough for 2 or 3 days. It is actually, in fact, is increasing our cost. When we call people with the social distancing in the buses or in the car, and they don't do any work, and we are doing staggering and all that. So if we are zero sale and only spending money, if you look at until the second lockdown, this was good enough. At least we were not spending any fixed cost or variable cost. But in lockdown 3, sometimes, we start working, sometimes we stop. Suddenly we come to know that, okay, some of our tier 3 is in containment zone or tier 2 is in containment zone. So supply chain is totally not established fully. And then, the production volume of each vehicle maker, it is varying from, 5% to 20-25% in, each. So our cost is increased and we are facing challenge. And moreover, not only today, this social distancing, we need to adopt and we need to continue for maybe next 6 months or a year, at least until the vaccine come out. So our cost is going to increase on a regular basis with the social distancing because our tech time, the customer requirement, the cycle time, these are the terminology we use in our manufacturing sector is changed. So our cost of production is increased, and we are finding, it is a great challenge for us and also for our tier 2.